For me, the typical, I might be wrong, but the typical Leica customer is a middle-aged dentist with too much money to spend, with a serious passion for photography, with an aim to really make nice images, but not earning the money from it. It's almost like owning a Porsche.
Maybe you're right. I mean, maybe I need to change profession, become a dentist, have much more money, and then buy the Leica.
What's new in filmmaking technology this week? News, reviews, education, insights, opinions, and ideas from the CineD newsroom with Nino Leitner and Johnnie Bahiri. This is Focus Check, the weekly Cinetech podcast.
Welcome everybody to episode 47 of CineD Focus Check. Hi Johnnie.
Hello Nino, how
Happy
are you?
New Year.
Happy New Year. It's already forgotten.
Yeah.
It's like there's so much happening.
Yeah, in case you wonder, the last couple of episodes you saw were a little bit pre-recorded because of course everybody's taking a little bit of a break. So the episode on the worst and best camera gear, the episode on the lab test in review, and the AI one with our writer Omri, we recorded in December. And now it's actually the first time we're back in the studio.
Yeah, first one for 2025. So it's almost live, no?
Almost live. But there's already a lot of new stuff to talk about. So just as a little bit of an overview, what we're going to talk about today, we're doing a little bit of a feedback session on the last few episodes because we got a lot of feedback from people who watched the worst and best camera gear purchases that seemed to be very popular. People had a lot to share. I just want to mention some of the comments and emails we got. And then also, same for the lab test episode, just briefly. Then we are going to talk about a new Leica camera that was just announced, the
SL3-S.
SL3-S, okay. We'll talk about
maybe my review, the
Osmo Pocket 3 Pro review, because you already did one before. Right. We'll talk about the new DJI Flip drone, which we also have here. We'll talk about the EVF, the HDMI EVF from Kinefinity, which is finally an EVF you can use with any camera. Then we talk about the Getty and Shutterstock merger and what that means for the stock images in general, still and footage industry. Canon considering outsourcing camera manufacturing from Japan. The Hollyland LARK M2S, which is a little wireless lav.
Really button size, no?
Well, it's the first one which doesn't have a logo on top, so that's worth mentioning. And some small stuff, but that's about it. That's enough to talk about. So let's get started with a little bit of a feedback session on the one of the last episodes, the worst and best camera gear purchases ever. So both Johnnie and I shared some of our best and worst investments, and I think it seemed to be very popular.
It's like we're opening a Pandora box here. Everybody has his own scar and like, where's the money gone? And
I just think it's very interesting. We got some really interesting comments. So somebody, Britim, mentioned that he bought the original Red 1, later updated to the MX sensor, and said basically that it's one of the best investments he ever made.
Really?
He or she ever made.
I'm curious about this. You know why? Because sometimes by the time that you switch on the camera and it's turning on, it's already sunset. That's my experience with the camera.
With the Red 1, yeah. But 15 years later, he's still using it on some stuff.
Wow,
and
amazing.
I think one of the reasons, and that's a very good point, I think he writes, many don't realize that with a Red Code RAW, the debayering algorithm periodically gets updated, meaning previously shot footage can actually benefit from the latest debayering enhancements, resulting in better footage on stuff that was shot 15 years ago. I mean, that's really unique. Nice. I mean, we haven't...
Actually, it's worth a test, no?
Worth retesting the Red 1. Yeah, that's a big one. Then Leonard Manfred, bought a lot of stuff. I mean, he has Arri Alexa, C400, Venice, F65, basically everything that's out there.
He likes equipment like us.
Yeah. But similar experiences with some cameras. Like I mentioned the C400, the original one. Still uses them as workhorses. Good points here. Also with a Ronin 4D, amazing rig, but haven't used it much. I mean, that's one of the things we hear with a lot of people because it is an amazing camera, but it's something because you can't use it as your main camera. It's actually, it's a big investment for something you can't use all the time. So I guess that's a hint for what DJI should do for the next generation. So it's kind of make it workable as a normal camera as well.
Imagine.
Yeah. And we'll talk about the Osmo again, which is kind of connected to that. One good point from Sight Sound, who is a member of CineD for a long time, I think that's a very good point. I think the era of clients caring about the camera is coming to an end. Large format sensor cameras with 10-bit log profiles are more than sufficient for the majority of clients. I completely agree. I think I think we mentioned this too, is that the differences between cameras are becoming very much negligible for the majority of people, unless you're really working in high-end cinema. And even then, that's why it's become so difficult in this market to sell a new camera, I think, because the one you have is good enough, right? And absolutely true for clients. They don't see the difference anymore. And I also think they've gotten used to shooters showing up with small cameras on set, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't the case 5 or 10 years ago, for sure. Marcus Trevor mentions that his best decision in terms of purchase decision in terms of editing was to buy Final Cut Pro 10 in 2012 for $300 because they haven't ever charged for any upgrade. It was free. And I think the same is true, of course, for DaVinci Resolve Studio, which is very different from Adobe and Premiere, which you only can get with a subscription that you pay monthly or annually. So, and of course, if you just do the math over time, how much money you spend on each platform, it's quite clear. But again, I mean, how much money do you make editing? So it's always like a give and take. It might just be a small blip on your bookkeeping if you earn money with it. So, but still, it's a big thing. Now today you can edit Netflix films with a $500 Mac Mini with M4 and software for $300. That's true. I mean, we know that the current Mac Mini M4 seems to be one of the best price performance ratio Macs ever, even in its basic spec configuration. We might get one for Florian, who's sitting behind the camera here, because he needs it, and I think it's just worth it. And 5D Mark II mentioned again. People were renting packages for $1,500 a day. I mean, this is honestly when clients were still kind of blind to.
Well, they didn't know. Suddenly they got the like a film look for a fraction of the price of a film camera.
Yeah.
So I think there's always those gaps when you can charge clients more if you want to, when they're not fully aware of the technology.
Yeah.
But hey, everybody's a bit different now. As you said, those cameras are playing maybe a little bit of a less importance in an overall production. Yeah.
We have some more interesting comments on YouTube on that video. Best purchase, Panasonic Lumix S5 II-X. I completely understand why. I mean, it's really...
Especially for the price now. I mean, the S5 II in general isn't at the lowest ever price. I think it's like $1,600 at B&H. It's unbelievable.
It's incredible for a full-frame camera.
Yeah, that's right.
That feature-packed with a very good in-body stabilizer. Best camera purchase ever, GH5, ahead of its time. Yes, true. FS700. Whoever remembers that camera? I mean, I remember 10 years after it came out, people were still using it for slow motion because it was the only one. I think it was able to do 240 frames per second in HD, and no other camera came close. Only in bursts, of course, but still, that makes sense. Best camera investment so far, FX3 Cinema Line. It has paid for itself countless times since day one. Interesting, yeah. This is a camera we completely underestimated, simply because it is the same as the A7S III. But the people love the body size, they love the ruggedness, and really use this on cinema sets all the time.
One or two Hollywood films that were done with this camera did a great service for it, which put in shade the FX30, which is not a least good camera. It's just Super 35, and sometimes the price difference, and people go like, why should we invest?
And Gen X doesn't seem to mind that there isn't a viewfinder, right? Which is something that we don't quite understand. I'm kind of in between. I cannot, but you can't understand it at all. I prefer not to do Hollywood
films, but do care about EVF.
So yeah, because the A7S III has a viewfinder and that one doesn't, and people don't seem to care. But we will talk about a viewfinder that is finally there, that can be used with any camera later today, the Kinefinity. An episode I can finally relate to. That hurts a little bit. It's like somebody couldn't relate.
Hopefully.
XL1. Yeah, okay. C400 was mentioned by a lot of people. Alpha series, I mean, it's very, very interesting.
Yeah,
just the different experiences. Just check out the comments on that podcast episode to see a lot of the feedback. But everybody has their own story to share in terms of. I didn't see many of the worst purchases though. That I would be very interested in.
I think it's very difficult for people sometimes to admit if they made maybe a worse purchase because it can be very costly.
Yeah,
it's almost like after you buy a car, you will always say, "Hey, this is such a good car." You know, I mean, I really like the whatever, and it'll be hard to admit that you made a mistake. And
you think cameras are becoming like cars, meaning they drop in value 50% the second you leave the shop with them?
It's actually horrible, Nino. When you think about it, I mean, we just talked about the Panasonic S5 II. This camera full frame is cheaper than the GH7. Can you imagine? It's unbelievable. So either it's indicating something which we are not aware of right now, or I mean, why? I mean, it's a good camera, so I don't know.
Yeah. Also, some feedback. We got some really good feedback on the camera lab test review episode with Gunther. We talked about all the camera lab tests we did in 2024 and the results. So if you missed that episode and you're interested in our lab tests, I really recommend you watch that because we really dive into kind of behind the scenes of those tests and also what we have planned for this year. We also mentioned the C400 Lab Test in this episode, which now we have published. So this is online now. So what do you say about the C400? Is it what people expected?
I don't think so. I think people expected a bit more. And one of the reasons is always this gap between what the manufacturer is promising as part of the marketing effort, which is why we actually started to make lab tests, and the reality. But again, I think we need to be very clear here. The camera is very capable and the camera is very good, and it's very good for the price Canon is charging. So I think we have to, and at the end of the day, most of us will end up filming actual things and not charts. So it's good to know that technically maybe this camera is not as capable as we were hoping for in terms of dynamic range and latitude. But on the other hand, it's still a very capable camera. You want to expose or talk a bit about the results quickly?
Yeah, so what's quite good is the rolling shutter result at 9.5 milliseconds. That's very good for a full-frame sensor with a resolution of 6K. And again, like you said, I mean, we still think it's an amazing camera. It is one of our best cameras of the year 24.
Next to the C80, which is the
C8, which is the same sensor and processing. Yeah, only a negligible difference. I think that it can do 6K 60 or something, and the C80 can only do 6K 30. But other than that, all the modes are the same. It has triple base ISO, so people would expect that those are kind of on par with dynamic range. But our tests showed that you kind of lose a stop every time you go up with those base native.
We talk about RAW now, yeah? Just to be clear.
Yes, the native base ISOs. It's cleaning up a little bit more with if you record in XAF AVC, because of course, I mean, the compression kind of is getting rid of some of the some of the noise.
Yeah.
But still, the result is average for a camera like that. So it's it's actually that we have some Canon cinema cameras like this. I think the C500 Mark II, but also the C300 Mark III are performing better in dynamic range compared to the C400. Again, consider the price. It's an $8,000 camera, and also the C80 is what, $5,500.
Things I can't remember by heart, but of course it's the other cameras are more expensive. So that's what I'm saying. It's like you still get a lot of things more. You get 6K RAW, all those things, but it isn't performing as well. It's doing quite well with exposure latitude, though. I think we're around 8 or 9 stops can be recovered, so that's relatively good. Of course, it's not the best camera that we've ever tested. I mean, that still is by far the Alexa 35 with the exposure latitude. But this, like we see other recent cameras like the Sony A9 III, which of course has a global shutter full frame sensor, and that gives 9 stops of exposure latitude.
whereas the C400 ends up being around 8 stops. The V-Raptor VV and V-Raptor X VV also has solid 9 stops, but completely different price, of course. And the Burano, I mean, whereas that camera had other issues, showed close to 10 stops of exposure latitude, which is a very good result for a recent camera, of course.
You know, I'm almost tempted to kind of do an open call for the manufacturers and ask them to cooperate in terms of, this is a vital thing for so many people, yeah, the dynamic range, rolling shutter, and so on. Maybe to consider not to put such a high numbers, be a bit more modest and closer to reality, or closely to cooperate, because we are here to test anyway the cameras, and I wish we could make some type of standard, so then everybody knows that we are on the same page here. That's what you should expect from the camera and from the manufacturer, and you know, nobody will point a finger. I think it can do only good for the industry if there's a certain standard here, and we are happy to raise the ball and cooperate even tighter with manufacturers.
Well, I guess what happened here, they used a sensor that's not new and kind of reused sensors. That's what people are thinking, because it very similar results to other cameras that are older. You never know. You know,
it's
like
legit. I mean, it's legit. The part which hurts most is to declare a certain number that maybe is not there. But again, almost everybody is doing it.
But it's still, you know, like it still makes sense why it's called C400 now, because when it was announced, everybody was like, well, what's going to happen, especially with the C500 Mark II, which is also full frame. Why would people still buy that? Now you know, right? This is different. These results are different. Whereas a lot of other things in the camera, of course, are better and more updated because it's just a newer camera. Yeah. So, but again, I mean, because we mentioned the GH7 before, the GH7 actually has a very similar result in exposure latitude, which is much smaller, amazing for such a small, it's a smaller sensor, but it's also much cheaper camera. Yeah. So, again, like what we mentioned before, you know, like it doesn't matter which camera you use anymore, in a sense that the results are now, even technically, they're coming very close to each other, unless you go for the very high end. Yeah.
Good.
Okay. Let's move on to your Osmo Pocket 3 review. Actually, I thought you were going to call it Osmo Pocket 3 Pro review because you did a review already.
Yeah. The thing is, if I would call it Pro, I didn't want to confuse people to think there's a Pro model of the Osmo Pocket 3. Yeah, that's why I chose Osmo Pocket 3 review, and then, of course, name it if it's any good for professional use. And when I'm talking about professional use, what I try to do here is put the actual camera in a bit more stressful environment. I was escorting Wakamatsu-san, who is a great person, a very nice friend. Used to work for Sigma. You might know him as from the past, but he moved on, and one of his hobbies is racing. So he's really doing it for so many years now. And every few weeks he finds himself on the racing track, a bit away from Tokyo. So I joined him, and of course, like I really like to come to those type of events completely unprepared. I love it. I don't want, I don't like to read about places. I don't like to watch other videos on how it looks. I want to experience firsthand where I'm filming and the person I'm featuring as things are happening. Yeah, that's what I love. And that was kind of a bit of a gray day, unfortunately. And I mean, in my imagination, of course, I thought I'm going to do even more in terms of beautiful angles and everything. But all in all, and that's also part of the feedback that we got from people who watched the video on a 65 or 75-inch OLED screens, they still think it's really good and it's really sharp. And I'm very happy with the results. So when it comes to professional use, first of all, this camera has a Pro section, like you can turn it from kind of normal to Pro, and then that means that you will record in 10-bit 4:0, not 4:2, and you can also choose to work on D-Log M. That's exactly what I did here. But I think the most important thing to remember, this camera in the combo version of it, which means it comes with some additional battery and also has the DJI Mic 2 all together as a set and another wider angle attachment to the lens. It's about $700, which is amazing for what it is. You literally come with such a small bag, and it was almost hurting me not to take a tripod. And I actually left with a bigger bag because that's what I'm used to go to a production, to the field, just in case I have everything with me. And here I found myself still taking the bag, but using literally everything that was in the small bag of the DJI gives when you buy the creator combo. And I also had a Core SWX, another battery with me just to charge things if I need. And that's it. I mean, it was unbelievable to work. It was such the feeling of freedom, yeah. And it's a 1-inch sensor camera, so that means if you want to play with the depth of field, you have to be a little bit closer to the person. But other than that, as you stated before, I felt that if it's kind of a depth of field because of a larger sensor or kind of mobility, I really prefer the mobility part of it. And that's one of the only cameras in the market that you can hold on a vertical way, and that means that it's so easy to handle and together with the audio, because the DJI Mic 2 will record in 32-bit float.
Did you use the 32-bit when editing?
In some parts, because there was so much noise there. Especially there was another track next to it when people were literally killing tires. I mean, they did this. It was amazing. But most of the time I use the recorded, whatever I record, because it doesn't transmit the 32-bit float. I mean, I know many people are asking if that can happen. So for now, it doesn't. So the 32-bit float is recorded on the transmitter, and on the camera itself, you get
actually like all of those wireless that can record 32-bit, they never transmit it. They always record it internally. I think it's too much data.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just saying maybe one day it will be possible. For now, it's not. But yeah. So if you have any other questions, or if you guys have any question about the camera, one thing which I really discovered after publishing the video, this is such an extremely popular camera. I mean, more and more people are really discovering that for the price, it's almost the price performance, yeah, and it can take photos. You can use it for your family trips without, being. I don't want to say, but nobody from the family likes when you hold a camera in front of the face. That can really lead to a divorce. And of course, another part of this camera that I didn't touch is live streaming and so on. But it's absolutely a capable tool.
Did you end up? I know it has this little function where you can. I mean, it has of course, it's a fixed focal length lens, but it has this ability to zoom
3 times.
It's like cropping in.
Yeah.
Did you use it
all the time? Because I'm really happy that they actually implemented it, and only 3 times. So it means you don't really cannibalize the image quality altogether, because maybe they could have done even more, but then it really become like too much of a digital zoom. One of the things that I would love to see in the future, 2 main things. First of all, if DJI could actually add like in mobile phones another lens, which is like a tele lens, that would be really great. And the other thing is, there's still this kind of like a duck, because it's a 3-axis thing. I mean, if you want a complete smooth, like a floating image, you need to use one of those.
Did you train
arms.
your gimbal walks?
I try to, but maybe I'm not that good.
The soft knees.
Yeah, but I'm just saying that if that can be improved, great. If not, there are other ways to compensate on that. But
I think we talked about it before. I mean, to have a mini version of the Ronin 4D with that fourth axis, I think would absolutely be popular.
Yeah.
To have this, even if it could still be tiny, essentially.
And what I use just to complete my set on my equipment on set, I also had this K&F variable ND filter, which is tiny. It's really amazing how they made it. I put it. It's sometimes hard to twist a little bit, but when you shut off the DJI Osmo Pocket 3, it doesn't interrupt. It can still park nicely, and I had no issues with that. I mean, I wish it was a sunny day, but sometimes you come to it is what it is. Yeah. So
well, I think the advantage is you won't have these hard shadows that are probably a little bit harder to grade.
Yeah.
Because it is a 420 image after all.
But you can see in some of the shots, of course, on the track, I wish that I had a nice more tele in order to capture, especially in slow motion.
Well, you did a great job doing a story about a person. But of course, if you did a real want to document a race, it would be difficult with the focal length.
Yeah, but still, I'm very proud of the end result.
You didn't put it on the bike though, no?
In my imagination, yes, but can you imagine if that drops on the field? What happened? Who will take the responsibility? That can cause a major accident.
Yeah.
So on the field, there is nothing. You can't do this. And again, in my imagination, I thought I will, but that was not possible.
Good. I'm glad you didn't.
Yeah. I can.
Otherwise, we would do a video call from a Japanese prison.
No. I had a podcast from the Japanese prison. Yeah,
I'm sure a prison in Japan is quite comfortable though.
I came equipped, by the way. I had this arm from KMTV, which is like Tilta, Movmax, and others. That's the one that I had with me.
Yeah, I remember.
And actually, there was no place on the motorbike even to attach it, but that's a different.
I'm glad you didn't try. Okay, cool.
Okay, good.
Yeah, so if you didn't see that yet, very much recommended to watch that review.
Thank you.
And again, as usual with Johnny's review, you come for the camera, you stay for the story. So same for this one. Very nice person. Also
nice family. At the end, we actually ended up at his home with his parents, and the hospitality, they're such a nice.
But they didn't want to be on camera, I guess.
That's right. They asked not to be on camera. So
it's just like Charlie Brown's mom.
Yeah, well, so you see hands and Japanese food. Yeah. What can I do?
Okay.
Hopefully next time.
Yeah, cool. So let's hope for a new generation of the Osmo Pocket 3. It's actually almost a year since it was released.
Time, huh?
You never know with DJI. Some products they replace every year, then they skip years sometimes. I agree with you. It seems to be extremely popular, so I think it's only a matter of time until a new one comes, and hopefully they will expand. And actually, but like for the Ronin 40, for example, how long has that been in the market now? 3 or 4 years, and it's still doesn't have a successor. The 8K was released a little bit later, but still, that's But this is a mass product kind of, so I'm sure they will replace this soon.
I hope so, and I also really urge other manufacturers, especially Japanese manufacturers, because they are the main in our industry to produce cameras. Please take a close look at that particular device, because it's a different thinking and it's very easy to work with. Not only that, we talked about prices, and we're going to talk in a second about Canon losing some market share. This is literally less than an iPhone. iPhone 15, 16, is 1,000? It's over $1,000 US. Here for 700, you get an amazing value for money.
Yeah, as much as I didn't like the first generation of the Osmo Pocket, because you could tell how much they got better every time. The first one didn't have a screen. You had to connect the phone. The second one had this tiny screen, and now you have this.
This is actually a 17-inch screen. No?
We'll be back after this message from our sponsor.
1 Minute Tips by Fujifilm and CineD. Let's talk about camera moves. Let's say you have a tripod set up to follow a subject traveling left to right. Simple enough. We start the follow, pan, exit frame, no problem. Well, let's see what happens when that pan angle is increased. All of a sudden, you're leaning uncomfortably in one or both directions, or starting to try and move your feet, which is distracting to operating and maintaining a frame. What do? Well, it might seem counteractive at first, as you want to be comfortable in your starting position as you wait for the action, but actually, you want to establish your end position as the comfortable resting spot and lean into discomfort in the start. Think of it like stretching an elastic band. It's harder to control your movement and speed and end position when you're actively stretching out the band than the other way around. Same concept here. You'll have better control easing into a relaxed position than worrying to try and find your balance at the end of a move. Check back for more camera operating tricks. 1 Minute Tips. Until next time.
And now back to the show. Yeah, let's move on. Actually, you mentioned it. Canon is considering, there was an interview, Petapixel, I think, reported this first with their CEO, that they are considering outsourcing camera manufacturing to cut costs. Outsourcing meaning have other companies manufacture. They say they are low-end cameras, but still, Canon closed a factory in China, which was manufacturing their compact cameras. Of course, that market has almost died because of smartphones. But there seems to be a little bit of a resurgence among Generation Z, a little bit, that it becomes more modern to have a camera again. We see this with the Fujifilm X100VI and also other small cameras that all the manufacturers are focusing on. I think Panasonic also released this Lumix S9 and so on. So they see this market. I'm not sure if Canon still has anything in this market, but we see that, this was a power shot, which used to be very popular at the time. Kind of doesn't exist anymore. But yeah, it's an unfortunate sign of things to come that, outsourcing camera manufacturing is always, it's almost like Olympus with their OM. They kind of sold the whole company or the camera division.
Well, it has to make sense from the business perspective. And I don't see Canon giving up so fast.
No, of course not for the high.
No, I'm just saying. And I'm sure they will find their way. Maybe next time I'll visit Japan for CP+. Just maybe I should take a closer look at Canon's booth and see what they have, because the Japanese market is always a little bit different and they really, really like this type of retro on one hand, but advanced retro. That's why the Fujifilm, the Instax, is so popular in Japan and doing extremely well and brings a lot of money to the company. For example,
yeah.
I don't think in the West it's that popular. I don't know.
But the exact quote from Canon's chairman and CEO Fujio Mitari is, "We want to go fabless, like factory-less, I guess." With the printers and lower-end digital cameras we manufacture in Asia, we can become more asset-light by outsourcing based on production quantity rather than maintaining our own factories. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, not great for the industry, I guess. One thing I want to mention also, which is not great for the industry, is there's recent news that Getty Images and Shutterstock are seeking to merge business. Now, this is not good news for people shooting stock images and photos. Why? Both of those companies combined together own around 75% of the stock image market, meaning that would leave very few other outlets to sell stuff, and that one of the major other ones would be Adobe stock.
Was that approved already by the regulators?
It's not approved yet, but okay. With the incoming American, US administration, I guess there's a reason why they are announcing this now, because they are more likely to approve it than the previous one. Yeah, that's trouble. We know that the stock footage industry and stock image industry is already in trouble because since they introduced AI, yes, but even before, they all introduced subscriptions in the last few years, and we know from some major contributors who made have tens of thousands of images in these platforms and footage clips, especially. You could still make good money, especially with stock video, if you had a lot of stuff. Stock photos already dead for the last 10 years, to be honest. Didn't make sense to add more because the amount of stuff out there you couldn't make any money. And I know this for myself. I have a portfolio on iStock, which last time I filled it was like 10, 15 years ago. And those couple of clips, they sold well in the beginning and you saw the decline. And it's with the subscriptions, of course, you get a much smaller percentage than you used before when people were actually paying per item. But and then AI, of course, AI with AI images, especially, I think it's already for images, it's very hard to quantify. But it'd be interesting if you're somebody who shoots stock footage or images, please get in touch, even anonymously if you don't want your name. But I'd be very curious to hear how much that impacted your business already, like the move to subscriptions, and then also now the current wave of AI generated images must have a huge impact. Not so much on video yet, but that's coming. But for still images, for sure, the AI stuff will already have eaten a lot of that market.
We are not consumer in the sense of I see a lot of news agencies they're using a lot of those stock images, but sooner or later. I guess this is, as you said, this is a sign of a crisis. Actually, not a strength here.
It's a big
but
crisis.
It's like, let's see.
This used to be very good business for a lot of people, and I know a lot of people who, like on the side, were always shooting stock clips because they basically made some money forever if you had enough of them, and if you were very organized, I mean, you could make a good living of those. But unfortunately, that is something that's breaking away. But I'm just curious from people to hear what their experiences are. But this is not something good, and I really hope this will be declined by the authorities. But I fear it won't be.
Let's move on. I mean, this is a bit not like, I don't want to say depressing, but like
it is. It is, but it needs to be mentioned. Now, we want to highlight this because it might be relevant for some of you guys. So there was an announcement from Canon that for the Canon R5 Mark II, some specific SanDisk cards would actually cause corrupted, especially photo files, still image files. You really need to be careful what cards you're using with that camera. Now, it's interesting that this announcement came from Canon and not from SanDisk. But yeah, so if you use any Extreme Pro SDXC UHS2 V60 64, 128 or 256 gigabyte card, so there's quite a high-end card from SanDisk with the R5 Mark II, you might end up getting corrupted or abnormal images. And that is, of course, troubling news. Canon says you should get in touch with SanDisk for, like warranty or whatever. Yeah. I mean, honestly, this is
imagine
something...
telling this to the bride and and groom. Sorry, guys, just, the images are corrupted. I have to call SanDisk.
We have to really, I mean, everybody should know this because SanDisk cards are extremely, everybody uses them. They're very popular. So the likelihood of somebody having, those cards in your camera are very, very high. Now, this camera also uses CF Express Type B. So I would recommend just use CF Express Type B for video anyway, because it seems to be more reliable in general and can sustain a higher data rate. And so just if you have these cards, just don't use them with this camera anymore.
What I'm curious, because we know from manufacturers, until they come to the point of actually recommending a card, those cards are going through a really very
rigorous test.
Exactly. So I'm really I'm wondering what happened here. If that went through those tests and actually was recommended by the manufacturer, and that's why Canon is actually announcing this, or really interesting. But
it's not it doesn't look good for SanDisk, also because we all know this problem they had with the Extreme portable SSD V2 drives, which were still sold or still are sold maybe for a very long time, even though a lot of people had problems with them failing. So it's troublesome that something like this happens. And that's,
but that summarizes our kind of not so happy news, no?
Negative Nelly news. Okay, let's move on to some new news. New drone from DJI. So they just announced the DJI Flip a couple days ago. So this is what it looks like in case you watched the video version of this podcast. It's very different in a way that, I mean, the body is similar to what we had. But
sorry,
you
that's
compare
the drone,
this,
or that's the hairdryer?
That's the drone folded up. If you compare this to the Mini, that's the Mini 3 Pro, which is still in the market now. There's also Mini 4.
So I don't know if people can see.
So you saw a very much bigger footprint when it's folded up,
but
which also means that the weight is the same. It's 249 grams, which is why I'm comparing them. I'm not sure, honestly, why they are releasing this. You could put all the technology also in a new version of the Mini.
But that seems so much more protected. I mean,
I guess that's, the main reason is maybe to have these built-in prop guards, right? I think for the Mini, if I'm not mistaken, it wasn't possible to add propeller guards like you can do with the higher-end Mavic and also some of the other drones, the Air, I think. I'm never using prop guards, so I don't know. But these ones are really built in. Oh, it's automatically switching on when you open it. Interesting. We didn't do a proper test of this yet, but it seems to deliver quite nice images. It's 10-bit. Also, same D-Log M with 420, and I don't think it's 422. You can use it with your phone or with a controller. There are different packages available. It's quite inexpensive. I think it starts at 365 euros, probably the same in US dollars. It is definitely a beginner drone. The price is very aggressive. Just did a bit of a maiden flight here at the office. I find the noise a bit distracting. It's very
high pitch.
It's very high pitch. It feels like a swarm of wasps is following you, but in a higher. I didn't do a direct comparison, but it seems to be higher pitch than the Mini. And yeah, this definitely beginner drone. I guess the guards are the main selling point, meaning that to have people feel more comfortable if they're crashing into something. But still, it is a drone, meaning you have to really take precautions. It has obstacle sensing. I don't think it's omnidirectional, but at least at the bottom and the front. And yeah, it's in the market now as usual with DJI products. They're already shipping it. There's a lot of beginner drones now. We have the Mini 4. Let me think. There is a Mini 4 and a Mini 3 Pro.
I lost count in terms of.
And now there is this one. It's like it's very hard to still kind of keep the overview here. But at least it's the first different looking design we've seen in a while.
A different name. Hey, Flip. Yeah.
With the Neo. I mean, the Neo is also, the Neo is really the entry level, and this is the next one, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I still have to kind of make sense of where they put the different drones in the market. But this definitely can be used for some, like if you only have the odd shot that you need and you're not an experienced drone pilot, this is probably makes sense to get because, like you have a production where you have 1 or 2 shots that you want from a drone. This can be easily done with this one, and you don't need to worry too much about crashing into something or whatever. Of course, you have to take precautions, but still, they are very easy to fly now, and it's worth having a drone with you if you're shooting anything. To be honest, just be clear of the regulations and wherever you shoot. Right, just because it is 249 grams doesn't mean you can fly anywhere. Those laws were changed also in Europe, so you might have a lot of limitations still, but of course less limitations than you have with heavier drones. That's the Flip. Actually, the first time I heard Flip, I thought it can actually do this, like the Flip you see from the FPV drones, but it doesn't seem to be able to do that, so it's not flipping. Anyway, I don't recommend using just a phone to control it. It used to be quite laggy on older drones. I don't think it's much better now, unless the protocols, the Wi-Fi protocols are faster. But it's, yeah. I mean, of course, if you want to go, with a bare bones model, you can do that. But it always makes sense to have a proper controller, also in terms of reliability of the thing. Good. Let's move on to
some new stuff, more new stuff.
Hollyland announced a new wireless mic system called LARK M2S. Now, a mini concealed wireless microphone set. We've seen 1 million of those from everybody and their mom over the last 2 years, I would say.
So what is so unique about this one?
You tell me.
You know what? For the first time, there is no manufacturer's logo where we don't want it to be. I mean, there is a logo, but on the inner part of the microphone, which is a bit larger than the outer part, which is smaller, and it's clear. So first of all, well done, Hollyland, for listening, because so many of us, I'm running with a gaffer tape only to cover all the time the logos and names.
Yeah.
And it's for the first time that we have something like this that actually is much easier to digest because I don't feel like being like a walking advertising board for any manufacturer. It looks not professional.
I think it's a very smart design in any case, because it also means that the front part is much smaller, and that's one of the other things that always annoyed me about those. If you're not using them with a lav mic, that those boxes, like with the Rode and also the DJI, they're all like these little black boxes with a logo on top. So even if you conceal the logo, you still have like a recorder hanging off somebody's shirt, and it's heavy enough to really pull on the shirt.
I always put it, I know it's not the best solution, but I put it always from the inside and used only the magnet from the outside.
Okay.
Yeah. But
then you might have these rustling noises.
So far, touch wood. I mean, maybe I'm sacrificing a bit of the audio quality, but I think it's okay.
I like this. I mean, this basically looks like a lav mic now, with the outer part being same size as a lav mic. So unless this thing is super heavy and you have like a light shirt where it really hangs down, you can really use this instead of adding an additional lav mic. I mean,
which you can't. I mean, just to make sure, there are some obstacles here, like limitations, like there's no way to add
and also provided that the microphone capsule actually delivers a good sound quality. We haven't tested it, and has good preamps and stuff like that. But assuming that is the case, that is really something I think I can see myself using if I just need to quickly connect something. I don't want to deal with wires and stuff. So that's a very nice concept. Well done, Hollyland. And actually also the pricing is really
starting $139. What I
actually starts the USB-C starts at $119.
Yeah, that's more for mobile phones, but for camera it will start at $139. What I cannot see here is any windshield.
No, there is.
There is
in the packaging as a windshield. Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yeah. No, very, very cool. I think we should try that one. Also, just for the sake of completeness, there was another announcement in that area around the same time, from Godox, the Cube C wireless microphone system, which is very much like the ones we've seen before from many other manufacturers. So that is one with a logo on top, and it is one of those boxes.
For me, when I'm doing any of those mini documentaries or I'm running around, I stopped using any wireless system that doesn't have internal recording. Really, I mean, it's good that it can transmit, but I always need this hard copy as a safety. Of course, if it is 32-bit, it's even better.
But you're always listening to the audio if you're recording?
If it's 32-bit, not like, you mean if I'm on the camera?
With headphones, yeah?
Yeah, of course I'm with headphones, but I'm just saying I need the hard copy just to, if you're a one-man band, maybe it's a little paranoia here, I need hard copy. And since so many companies are offering hard copy recording in the transmitter, not even 32-bit, even if it's a normal 24-bit, I still will prefer this over a device that actually just transmitting to the camera. So, of course, do your math. I hope that that's just the beginning of something, no logo, and hopefully there will be a possibility to record also internally, although this is such a small device. But if it is, that will be really great.
I hope all the other manufacturers will now run after the Hollyland design. I hope for them that they patented
the no logo design.
But I hope for us that everybody else can do them as well.
Yeah.
Anyway, let's see what's coming. Okay. Let's move on to Kinefinity, the EAGLE HDMI EVF. So for the longest time, we've been preaching that we don't have enough EVFs on in the market that are versatile, that can be used with any camera.
Well, it's a bit tricky when you say any camera. First of all, Kinefinity is a Chinese manufacturer. You might know them from Marvo and other really great cameras that they are producing. And they already had a similar device. I think it was introduced last year with SDI, and now it's for the first time they have one with HDMI, which makes it cheaper, like $1,100 for the basic package here. It's a 1080p screen here. It's very robust.
It's OLED, right?
It's OLED. And for those of you that might ask, there is a USB connector here, USB-C, but this is really for powering it. So this is not a display port. So when it comes to Blackmagic devices that are accepting display through the USB-C, probably it will not work. We haven't tried it, but that's probably will not work. So this is a HDMI in, HDMI out. And again, what I'm really, the build quality here is very nice, and that can really work well with some of the cameras. I mean, there's so many of them. C80, C70, FX3, FX30, so many cameras out there with no EVF. And as an old-fashioned cameraman, DOPs doesn't matter. You need something as another point of stabilization, and also just to judge exposure a little bit better.
Well, I think
this can also trigger. Yeah, you can trigger with some of the cameras. You can trigger the recording through HDMI, and it has a diopter. So if you're like me, either with contact lenses or glasses, of course, it makes it easier.
I think it's amazing that it has HDMI loop through because, I mean, of course, that's really important in this case because if you use an HDMI only viewfinder, the reason is you probably have a camera that has only HDMI connector, no SDI, but then you would lose that connector for a monitor. So, and it's great that
for your director or whatever you can hear.
Yeah, or even a wireless. You can put a wireless transmitter after that and then just transmit everything elsewhere, or have an additional monitor on top, or a recorder, even external recorder. So that's really cool. The power option is only USB, right?
That's right.
That's a bit of a downside, I guess. I mean, not so much for those small cameras, of course.
But there are so many batteries now out there, small batteries, even V-mount that have this USB connector. Yeah. Some cameras will have.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have LEMO, but I guess that's not the target audience here.
Target audience.
Yeah, that's really cool. It really feels very solid. I mean, it looks like something that can, live for a long time, which is great.
Yeah.
How much is the price?
It's starting in 1,100. Right now, there's a 100 discount at B&H. And then depending on the package you choose, it can go all the way up to 1,500. Yeah. And this is for the Edge HDMI. And then it will come with NATO rails and everything just to attach it to the camera and so on. But it's a very solid product.
Well, I think we and many others told them when we saw this first, remember, on their camera, that the first time they showed it, it was part of a camera, the Mavo, I think. And then we told them that this needs to work on any camera. And I think a lot of other people told them that as well. So now they really listened. And it's really great to see that this is a universal viewfinder. I think, honestly, this can be much more successful than their cameras because you can use it with any camera.
Yeah, it's a nice supportive product.
Okay, great. So now we have an SDI and an HDMI version in the market. That's great. Maybe at some point there will be a version that has both. I don't know.
Maybe.
And that's very, very versatile. Okay, moving on. We had an announcement of the AltCineCam Eclipse, another Blackmagic Cinema Camera modification. Now, recently, in one of the recent podcast episodes, one of the last ones we recorded in 24, actually, we talked about the Nexus camera, the Nexus G1, I think it's called, which is basically a rehoused Blackmagic design 6K Super 35 sensor in a way. You can get it with a built-in speed booster, so you actually get that full frame field of view, and it's still in pre-production, I guess, but the Nexus looks very convincing. And now we have another one, and it's called AltCineCam Eclipse. And but that one is actually based on the micro camera. What is it called? The micro cinema camera, which I think, I don't even know if that's still in the market.
I have no clue where they're sourcing the cameras from.
But it's only a 1080p sensor. So, of course, that immediately makes it much less interesting for people. It's not a 4K camera anymore. The question is, who is buying a 1080p camera in 2025? So that's the one piece I don't understand. I think there are enthusiasts behind this project. So big shout out to them for doing this. However, I don't know how many people are interested in a 1080p sensor. It must be a very, very specific use case, I think, that you would go for. But form factor wise, looks very nice, looks very similar to a Red Komodo. And so not much else we can say about it because we haven't tried it. It has full size HDMI, 2 SDI out, which is great, and full size XLR microphone in, which I think are upgrades from the original Blackmagic micro cinema camera. So I don't think we have a price yet, but it also says that AltCine plans to unveil an RE mod and their Cine Pi camera, an affordable 16-bit RAW 4K camera. That sounds a bit more interesting, but let's see. It's interesting that all these mods are coming out. I guess it is a sign that Blackmagic is probably helping those guys a little bit. I don't know, because for the Nexus G1, we saw that they're actually using the sensor block, but not the full camera. from Blackmagic Design, so they might just sell them but it's interesting.
We don't know. It's all speculations from our end.
Of course, yeah.
One more new product.
Oh, what is it?
This one. This is the Leica SL3-S camera.
Almost forgot about it because at the time of recording, we don't have an article yet. Yeah.
So first of all, congratulations to Leica for bringing a new product to the market. If it looks familiar, it's because the body design is very similar to the SL3 that was introduced last year. This one, there's some differences. First of all, this is aiming more for video professionals. So it has a 24 megapixels sensor instead of the 60 in the SL3. And then it has other advantages. So just to start with, finally here we have face detection autofocus, which of course makes it easier. This is also the big advantage here over the older SL2S. And you can record in 6K open gate up to 30 frames per second. So the open gate here, of course, open a whole new. You can do a lot from 9x16 and any reframe and so on. So in general, what I would like to say about this camera, because many people are already speculating and asking. So first of all, when it comes to the sensor, we don't have, Leica is calling it a new sensor. We don't have any evidence to say if it's a new sensor or older sensor that Panasonic is also using or used in the past. What we know for sure that when you want to do like 4K 60p, the image will crop. And this is a pity because this is now 2025, and we were not expecting a camera when you do over 20 or 30 frames per second to crop. And this is a bit a pity. The other thing is...
How much is the crop?
It's noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that if you want to do a high frame rate with this camera, you can do this only in full HD. Then you can go all the way, I think it's 175 frames per second, if I'm not mistaken, but still only in HD, and then there's no autofocus anymore.
Is there log?
Yeah, of course. There's the L log from Leica. And I really want to separate between two major things. First of all, it's the picture quality, which I really like. I think they did a decent job here with the image and the variety of frame rates and recording formats. For example, you can really record in ProRes internally already.
In 4K?
5.8.
Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
You can almost 6K you can record internally. There's also, you can record externally via the USB-C, which is a great help to a SSD or anything else.
Is CF Express Type B? Or?
That's right. Finally, there's a Type B, CF Express Type B here next to the normal SD. So it's a very capable camera when it comes to the actual recording formats and so on. What I'm personally struggling with is the new menu design. And for me, that leaves so much to be desired that I have to say that's why I'm separating between the camera capabilities when it comes to the quality, image quality, and the fiddling with the menu. Very difficult for me.
What's worse than before?
It's it's a new design. I think it was first introduced with the SL3, and I never had any issues with the older design. It was very straightforward. This one, there's simple things. For example, it's nice that you can create different profiles, but you need to lock those profiles. Those within the profile, you need to lock the features. For example, MOV or ProRes or whatever. Now, in the minute that you kind of exceed what the camera thinks is good to do, it will automatically adjust the other things. If you confirm, and then you kind of a bit lose orientation where you started.
But you think it's really it's more like getting used to kind of issue?
I didn't get used to this at all, and I'm just saying that even if you kind of follow the logic of the camera, and you locking everything correctly according to what the camera lets you do. When you go out of the menu and when you come back, the lock sign is not there anymore. So you kind of not so sure, but you locked all those specifications and suddenly it's not there anymore. This is just an example. Yeah. So it really always gave me the feeling of uncertainty where I am and if I'm on the right formats that I actually chose.
Mm-hmm.
And
yeah, that's not good.
Other things is like, for example, I just want to give an example, the white balance. Yeah, I mean, you can be on a certain white balance, and then when you go out to a different page on the menu, it will show you the white balance on a different place, and you're not so sure anymore because it should have been throughout. Doesn't matter how you navigate. If you chose a certain white balance, that should be always from that starting point, and then to change. So, and by the way, you can't in this camera, for example, tune the Kelvin. You have presets, quite a lot of those, but you can't choose 5,600, for example. You can't choose. You can choose 5,500.
Okay.
For example, yeah.
You can't even manually set that.
You can't manually set the Kelvin. So small things like this, it's a pity because again, the build quality is amazing. The look of this camera is really you really like to like. For the first time, they also have this
swivel screen,
tilted screen. For me personally, I wish it was a full swiveling because at the end, when you put it somewhere, if you don't have a, let's say differently, if you have a swivel one, you can always flip it, close it, and then the LCD itself is protected. Here it will not be the case. EVF, really great. They always have great EVF. The resolution is nice and so on. And for anybody else which is starting with Leica, now there's no more physical on-off button. It's you have this one. I think you got some people used to this from the SL3. Like it or not, it's a digital one, and
it's only like standby.
Short press will turn off the camera for standby. Short press,
long press, I guess, really shuts it.
That's right, and long press will shut it down completely. So next to this, I think another thing that Leica has to do, because when this camera will be in the market, it will be about 5,000 euros. Yeah, give and take. And many will always question, unless you're a hardcore lover of Leica's cameras, people will ask, but it's a Panasonic camera. So first of all, we don't have the answer for that if it's a Panasonic camera or not. We know that the cameras that the companies are cooperating, but one of the major things that Leica has to do with the marketing department is to differentiate between them and Panasonic, especially that it's everybody knows and it's publicly announced that the companies are cooperating, but to make it more, because otherwise, why somebody, unless you are really a Leica lover, why would you pay to any mirrorless camera so much money today when in the range of the 2,000 plus, you can find so many other capable cameras?
Because it has a Leica sticker on it.
This is fine, and Leica is very profitable, and the people behind it are very friendly, and they are very cooperative. This is all okay, yeah. So either the strategy of selling in a higher price is really, they because we can see the results, they are very profitable. On the other hand, we want them to succeed. So the question is, if the pricing here is,
I guess they're never going for the mainstream, in a sense that they are not trying to compete with the big Japanese manufacturers in that sense. It's like trying to stay a little bit more exclusive and have this aspirational thing. And they really, I think the selling point, apart from the looks of the camera and kind of the prestige thing of having a Leica camera, is also that the out-of-the-box image is sexy, right?
It's very nice, and I didn't touch the photo side at all because I'm not a photographer and I'm not the one to judge how it works here. And of course, there are other benefits when it comes to photos. But it's an unanswered question for me if Leica will benefit more from selling less expensive and more people will actually jump on the wagon here and try their products, or it's okay to stay and say, okay, our cameras, when it comes to filmmaking, our DSL, our mirrorless cameras starting around $5,000 or 4,900 and take it from there. I don't know.
Well, I guess it's the same with Ari, like as soon as they would drop prices, they would make themselves immediately comparable to others. And don't forget about those brands specifically. We know from Ari that the fact that Ari, for example, never drops prices means that the resale value of their cameras is very high.
But this is not for the end user. We're talking here about the end user. Yeah, and everything here, like internal ProRes recording, internal ProRes recording, and external RAW recording to let's say Atomos. Every feature which is here, we've seen already before. Yeah, full frame, L mount, good. It's not, there's nothing new per se, but the look.
Yeah.
The Leica look here, which is really, really nice. So the question, if it's worth to spend the money, and that I will leave you guys to decide. And actually, I will be very curious to hear what you say, if this is in your mind and opinion, if it's a kind of a expensive Panasonic camera, which I don't think so, because still the look is different, or it's
for me, the typical, I might be wrong, but the typical Leica customer is a middle-aged dentist with too much money to spend, with a serious passion for photography, with an aim to really make nice images, but not earning the money from it. That's my, that's the kind of image I have from
one of the cameras.
It's almost like owning a Porsche,
One of the cameras that I enjoyed most to use, and I thought that I got one of the best images out of the box, was the original SL.
Yeah.
And at that time I was already wishing that it would be more accessible, because I know that the industry will simply benefit. Yeah, if this is more accessible. But again, maybe you're right. Maybe I need to change profession, become a dentist, have much more money, and then buy the Leica. Huh?
I think as soon as a brand like that drops their prices, it immediately becomes less interesting for the existing customer base, because whether you like it or not, this price difference, this high price, is actually a reason for them to consider it more, because it's something that differentiates them from all the others that own cameras.
Okay.
And that's that's true in every industry, whether it's a car, a camera, or anything like that. That it technically might be the same as something from another manufacturer. It still has, the look going for it, like the look of the images, that is this specific Leica look that people love. And the build quality and kind of like the heftiness of the whole body, which is very different from if you, for example, compare to a Lumix camera.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Anyway, guys, I promise in-depth review coming soonish, and maybe by the time that the podcast is out and the camera is out, I'll manage to compile a few images for you to see, and maybe put myself in the studio just to talk a little bit more in-depth about it.
Good. Let's move on to the last few bits and pieces. Okay. We published an article from our writer Jeff about vertical shooting for social media, ergonomics and practical concerns. Very interesting piece, because of course, whether we like it or not, more and more customers actually need vertical video. Now, it's a constant question whether you are shooting actually vertically with your camera. There's more and more manufacturers who have adjusted the firmwares of their camera, at least to kind of, switch the menus and stuff as soon as you turn them to the side. There's a lot of camera brackets from, Small Rig and many other rig makers that allow you to mount the camera vertically. And now there's also, of course, you can also mount it on a Ronin RS2, 3, 4 vertically with different brackets. And the question is, are you shooting vertically like that, or are you cropping into your image? Because if you are cropping into your image, which is enough for most purposes, because, those social media platforms usually play out an HD image. So the vertical resolution will be 1920, which is almost exactly the vertical resolution of a 4K image. So you shoot 4K, you crop out the middle, you end up with an HD image. But again, it means for framing purposes, it's very difficult, because I think the big challenge here is if your target audience, like if your target product will be both a landscape and a vertical video, I always recommend shooting twice, like shooting a scene 2 times if time allows for it, because one of the two, especially the vertical one, will always be a compromise, because actually you're compromising the landscape image, to be honest, because if you need always a vertical result, it means that you can't really do a proper close-up of a person, for example, anymore. You will always end up, the closest you will shoot is like a medium shot. It's troublesome in the kind of things you are shooting. So yeah, Jeff goes through some of the rigs that are available and what to do from his own experience, but also posing the questions when we will see an evolution, because I think there's a real market for a camera that has a sensor that can be turned by 90 degrees. And we haven't seen that, right? Imagine having a camera, because mounting the camera sideways is always problematic because you're completely sacrificing the ergonomics. You can't hold it properly anymore. You can't do the settings properly anymore, even though the menu might change on your screen. But what about simply having the full sensor block in front of a camera, being able to rotate that and click into 90 degrees?
But OpenGate is not just like that, so it's much easier to crop.
It's still cropping. That's what I mean. Like if you have a 17 by 9,
dedicate 9x16 sensor.
Exactly. Yeah,
that would be very limited. I mean, there was an April full joke from Ari with doing this rotatable.
I don't think we'll be limited, because it would mean that
a dedicated.
No, a sensor that is turnable. Like if you have a 16, 17 by 9 sensor, or
most of the sensors today are 4x3, and we are anyway
3x2. Yeah,
we are in most of the videos we are recording a 16:9 portion of it. So it just, I don't know if we need to rotate the sensor. We just need to allow like you allow 16 by 9 to allow 9 by 16, basically, no? Or I'm doing a wrong thing.
Well, if you want the full resolution of the sensor, you're still gonna have problems.
Why? If it's the sensor is 4x3 or 3x2.
Yeah,
doesn't matter. It's almost a square, almost like a square thing, and well, within it you decide what portion of.
But it's not. That's the point. It's not square. It's not exactly square, right?
Enough for the.
No, but if you want the full resolution, it's not possible, because if you have a 4K sensor, like let's talk about an average camera that has a 4K sensor, nothing higher. You can never have 4K vertically because you don't have the resolution there. You could only have it if you were physically, hardware-wise, you could turn the sensor.
But a square sensor, 6,000 by 6,000.
Yeah, but again, that means you would have to have a separate new sensor. I'm just saying, like one manufacturer who makes like something in the mount where you like whoop, and you just turn it a little bit. Yeah, they're all striving to find something new.
Okay.
You buy me a case of beer if somebody releases it during 2025.
Since when are you drinking?
Not really, but
I'll buy you a sense of not a sense, a case of beer so I can drink. Good.
Yeah, okay. We'll see. Anyway, well, we'll see if somebody releases something like that. But what my point being that there is no camera that is really, even though we have so much content being produced for vertical consumption, there's no camera dedicated to that yet, except for, I mean, you have some drones, right? We actually have that.
The DJI
has
Pocket 3 also.
Yes, and also there was one DJI drone. Was it a mini? I don't remember. I think it's one of the minis or the mini series in general that can shoot vertically. Like you actually, the whole thing is actually turning, and that was the only one. Yeah, okay, that's me. I'm alone in this opinion here, I guess, but still, I want turnable sensor. Yeah, you can't get me away from that. Last piece that we're going to talk about today. Nice educational article by our educational writer, Masha. Can a smell in a script make it to the screen? An opinion on writing for cinema. Now, obviously, of course, we don't have smell-o-vision yet, so you can't actually smell what's on screen, and I guess that's a good thing. It's a good thing for a lot of things. But that's why she's diving into that subject and actually talking about those systems, not necessarily she's mentioning those technical systems that allow for it, but more like writing. How do you actually write a smell into a script and then kind of convey that smell to the audience when they're actually watching the movie. Not an easy thing to do. And she's also mentioning some examples from our MZ courses. Seth Worley actually talks about that subject a little bit. But in general, like you might know some famous examples, like especially The Perfume, that it was a best-selling book, and then the movie, of course, they're dealing with. I mean, the whole book and movie is about smell, and she's really diving into that subject and how you can, put that into production design and also kind of convey smells, even though we can't actually smell in a movie. So very interesting piece. I recommend you checking that out on CineD.com if you're interested in that kind of stuff. Of like you need to make a smelly movie. Just read Masha's article, and I think with that we will close for this week.
Great.
Thank you, Johnny.
Thank you, Nino.
See you next week, and listen to us next week. See us next week on episode 48 already. We are kind of close to getting 1 year of weekly podcast.
It's a one-way ticket, huh?
Yeah.
Time is running.
It is. If you are not subscribed yet, please subscribe to our Focus Check podcast on one of the major podcasting platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere you can get podcasts. Leave a comment or give us feedback. As you saw in the beginning of this episode, we're actually talking about that feedback. So we're very much looking forward to that, and hear you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.